Upgrades.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another JVS movie review. Today, we're bringing you a review of a film that I, one, didn't know was coming out. Two, even when I found out it was coming out, I'm not going to say I was excited for it, because when you're making a prequel, one of the best horror movies ever made, you kind of get standoffish exactly what you're going to get here. But this one is the first Omen, and here's a quick synopsis. A young American woman is sent to Rome to begin a life of service to the church, but encounters a darkness that causes her to question her faith and uncovers a terrifying conspiracy that hopes to bring about the birth of evil incarnate. And this is directed by Arkasha Stevenson and stars Nell Free, Ralph Ensign, and Bill Knightley. Now, the first Omen is quite possibly one of the best prequel horror films I've ever seen. This film caught me completely off guard. Again, I did not know much about this film when it came out. I just knew it was entitled The First Omen, and I said, well, maybe it's a play on a horror film, and I didn't even know it was a prequel to the original Omen. But when we get into the beginning of the film and we are introduced to the character Margaret, played by Nell Free, and she's just a young woman going to Rome to take her vow to the Lord, we can sense it's something sinister going on from the moment we meet this character. And I'm going to pause there to tell you that Nell is amazing in this film. This is one of the best horror movie performances in a pretty long period of time here. She absolutely brings everything humanly possible to Margaret, whether it be when she's terrified, when she's trying to reassure people, down to the third act where she just goes off the rails, and it is a tour de force by that point in time, where you're just captivated every time she's on screen, and which is extremely important, especially in religious-based horror films, is that your lead character is so intriguing that it can keep an audience wondering what's going to happen next, even if it's kind of telegraphed a little bit and you kind of see it coming. Here with Margaret, as she's at an orphanage, which she was raised also in church in an orphanage, and she's in this orphanage and she meets this intriguing young woman. And from there, we get the gist of what this setup of this prequel is. As this is a setup of a prequel to see or meet Damien's mother. That is the whole purpose of this. Because other than that, there's literally no other reason to do a prequel to the Omen. But that is the whole setup here, is to meet Damien's mother. And the director does an amazing job at keeping you intrigued and also staying a step ahead of you exactly who that person could be. While it looks like the whole film sets up one thing, it does an amazing job of still never overly committing to one character. It gives you a multitude of people who could be evil in this film. It gives you a multitude of people who can be this main character that you're looking for, at the same time giving Nell the leeway to perfect this Margaret character. This is one of the best religious-based horror films in at least the last 10 years. And it is generally a scary horror movie, which you don't get often here. And I think a lot of it leads to direction and suspense building. This film is 2 hours long, which one is about 20 minutes longer than most horror movies are. But it's a slow-paced horror film. So if you are someone who is accustomed to the fast hour and 20, hour and 30 type of horror films, this one may not be for you. But if you're a fan of the original Omen and you understand the way they build that film as it kept on going on, I think you're going to be really, really, I'm not going to say intrigued, but really surprised that in this day and age that someone would take their time to build upon a storyline that everyone knows about, because that's the key thing here. Everyone knows what the Omen is. Again, you're going into it understanding Damien, understanding the hee-haw Damien, like the theme of the Omen. You know all of that. But here, they do an amazing job with this Margaret character, building a character that can stand alone in a film and be someone who you just are rooting for at times, terrified for at times. Other times, you're questioning her motives. It's something we don't normally get in these type of horror films. And for the year 2024, where we've had a lot of horror films miss, for this one to be the first one that actually hit it home is also amazing. Again, it reminded me of Evil Dead Rise, which was the same thing, where it was a film in a franchise that everyone knew about, but then this one just took off. And I think this exact same thing with the first Omen here. It absolutely takes off. And this is one of the first horror movies I can say that the third act of this horror film is possibly the best part of this movie. And that is rare because normally horror movies start off fast. But again, this is a slow build. As you're building the character Margaret, as you're building the suspense around what is this secret sect? What are they doing? When are we going to get to the big reveal of how did we come upon getting Damien? All of this stuff, it is built methodically from the moment this film begins to around the end of the second act. And while it's slow moving, it at no point in time leaves you bored or wondering what, like, is this film going to ever end? It does an amazing job of lasting throughout. And I think that's something audiences, especially of horror films, are going to thoroughly enjoy with this film. But the first Omen, brought to you by 20th Century Studios. Out of a possible 10, I'm going to give the first Omen an 8.5 out of 10. This is the best horror movie of 2024. This is the best religious-based horror film in years. I can't think of one off the top of my head that could come close to matching this. Nell Tiger Free, my goodness, she is at this point a next level person in horror. She's gonna be someone who a lot of people are gonna want to pay attention to see exactly what she does next. This is a tour de force performance that she gives. And Arkasha Stevenson, as a director here, at this point, I need to see so much more because she is fantastic in the director's chair. Her ability to build suspense in a horror film is second to none. She absolutely nails everything humanly possible about the Omen and answer questions along the way that if you're a fan of the original or even a 2006 remake that you may have had, she manages to answer those questions a lot in this film. While there's a little bit of reconning that happens at one point in time in the film that had me confused and it had me like, wait a minute, I know how the original Omen goes. But you don't get stuck up on that. You still get stuck up on the point that it's terrifically paced, beautifully directed, and just the level of artistry and building suspense in this film is great. That's what brings it home and makes it a horror film, because it's a horror film with only 2 jump scares at the most. It is not a lot of jump scares. She uses the atmosphere, the music, to build the suspense, to build to the horror elements of it, and not the cheap jump scares to get the audience going. It is some grotesque scenes in this film also that are going to be hard to watch. You're going to want to turn your back, especially some parts of the body that are shown in this film in ways that can terrify you. But again, it's all used to build the atmosphere of this amazing horror film that I think and hope everyone goes to see, because this movie comes out this Friday. Check it out in your local theaters. Let us know what you think. This has been another JVS movie review. Peace, people.